You know what? When Google's DeepMind team announced in 2016 that their AI had defeated the world Go champion, the entire tech world was stunned. Not because AI had won another game, but because Go was considered the last intellectual fortress that AI couldn't conquer. This ancient game, with 4,000 years of history, actually contained wisdom so profound that even the most advanced computers needed deep learning to understand it. Today, I want to use this game to introduce you to some Eastern ways of thinking that might sound mystical, but are actually incredibly practical. Hey everyone, welcome to Faith and Go. Let me start with a concept. Go isn't just a game, it's more like a living philosophy textbook, similar to The Art of War, which most people have at least heard of. Why? Imagine you have a 19 by 19 board with 361 intersection points. The theoretical number of possible games is greater than the number of atoms in the entire universe. For humans to master this astronomical complexity, pure calculation just won't cut it. That's why many Go players actually rely on what we call game sense or intuition, rather than real-time computation. So before AlphaGo came along, top human players were literally dozens of levels, stronger than computers. That's why even the most powerful supercomputers needed revolutionary algorithmic breakthroughs to master it. I remember when AlphaGo defeated Lee Sedol, many Western media outlets were discussing whether this marked a new era of artificial intelligence. But what they might not have realized is that this game itself embodies a complete system of thinking that has been subtly applied in the East for thousands of years. The crystallized wisdom in there is just countless. Alright, now let's look at the board itself. Looking at that board full of stones is like solving calculus. Complex stuff. But don't worry, this series isn't about teaching you to become a Go master. It's about showing you the inner charm of this game. The board is actually quite simple. Think of the entire board like a battlefield grid. The intersecting lines represent heaven or space, where the real battle happens. The outer edge of the board is Earth, which defines and limits the playing area. And the stones come in black and white. These represent humanity, divided into two camps. So we have heaven, Earth, and humanity. Pretty simple, right? Let's break them down one by one. Timing, the art of perfect moments. First, let's talk about heaven. You can think of heaven as the central core area. That center point on the board is called Tengen, which literally means origin of heaven. Why? Have you ever played Fortnite? Or any battle royale game? When you're in the center of the map, you have maximum freedom of movement. You can go in any direction, choose any strategy. But heaven has another meaning. Timing. The timing and sequence of moves in the game. It's a four-dimensional concept. Think about Tom Brady's Super Bowl performances. What made him great wasn't having the strongest arm, but his ability to make perfect decisions at perfect timing. When the pocket was collapsing, he knew exactly when to scramble, when to throw it away, when to take the sack. That's what Eastern philosophy calls heavenly timing, the wisdom of seizing the moment. An even more visual example is Robert Downey Jr.'s Sherlock Holmes. His power in those movies wasn't about physical strength, but about calculating timing precisely. Remember those slow-motion fight scenes? He predicted every opponent's move, calculated the timing of every action, and struck at the perfect moment. That wasn't pure physical strength. That was perfect mastery of heavenly timing. Terrain. Your environment is your weapon. Now let's talk about Earth. The edges of the Go board represent Earth, just like the sidelines on a football field. Think about it. In American football, the sidelines define the boundaries of play. They limit where you can go, but they also create strategic opportunities. When you get pushed to the sideline, your options are limited, but that can also become your advantage. Remember Odell Beckham Jr.'s incredible one-handed catch? He used the sideline's limitation and turned it into an amazing play. This reminds me of the chase scenes in Fast Furious. Dominic Toretto never just relied on having a faster car, he always used the terrain, bridges, tunnels, buildings. That's the concept of geographical advantage, the wisdom of using your environment. But when it comes to using environment, nobody does it better than Jackie Chan. In his movies, he always borrows advantageous elements from his surroundings to fight enemies. Ladders, chairs, flower pots, construction sites, even shopping mall escalators. He turns the entire environment into his weapon arsenal. That's the perfect demonstration of geographical advantage. Not fighting against your environment, but making your environment work for you. Human harmony, awakening inner power. Finally, we have humanity. The stones represent people, black and white, representing two opposing camps. Isn't this just a reflection of the real world? Each of us is part of some team, with our own position and role. This is essentially about team dynamics, understanding alliances, identifying who supports you, who opposes you, and how different players interact with each other on the board of life. But here's where it gets really interesting. It's not just about understanding these dynamics, it's about mastering them. Martial arts master Bruce Lee once said something that still amazes me. The truly strong can control their environment to the greatest extent, rather than being controlled by it. That's the core of human harmony. A powerful self, the embodiment of subjective initiative. It's not about passively accepting environmental limitations, but actively shaping your environment to serve your purpose. Now that we've explained heaven, earth, and humanity, we need to explain why. Go pieces come in black and white, Yin-Yang thinking, the wisdom of unity in opposition. Now I want to share a concept that might blow your mind. Yin-Yang, or what we call Taiji. Forget those slow motion exercises you see in parks. I'm talking about Taiji as a fundamental principle. You all know binary code, right? 0 and 1, off and on. That's the foundation of our entire digital world. Every app, every website, every social media post ultimately comes down to combinations of zeros and ones. Taiji is the ancient version of this concept. Black and white, yin and yang, positive and negative. Without contrast, there's no definition. Without difference, there's no meaning. Imagine if the entire world was just a white screen. You wouldn't see anything. Only when you have black pixels can you see shapes, text, and images. This concept is also fundamental in the business world. Steve Jobs understood this, which is why Apple's design philosophy was always about balancing simplicity and complexity. Their product interfaces look simple, but the technology behind them is incredibly complex. That's Taiji, opposites, creating harmony. Modern applications, Eastern wisdom in Silicon Valley. You know why so many Silicon Valley leaders are interested in Eastern philosophy. It's not because it's exotic, it's because it's practical. Look at Amazon's Jeff Bezos and his long-term thinking strategy. He was willing to sacrifice short-term profits for long-term market dominance. That's Go thinking. You're not trying to win every local battle. You're trying to win the entire war. Or consider Warren Buffett's investment philosophy. He says, "Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful." Isn't that the perfect application of Yin-Yang thinking? When market sentiment is extremely positive, smart money becomes cautious. When everyone panics, opportunities emerge. These concepts aren't just philosophical abstractions. They have practical applications in real life. In workplace politics, understanding the humanity element can help you navigate complex relationships. You need to know who's on your team, who's neutral, who's opposition. Just like in Go, you need to know which stones are yours, which are your opponents, and which territory is contested. In project management, the Heaven-Earth-Humanity framework can help you assess situations holistically. Timing, heaven, resources and constraints, earth, team dynamics, humanity. When Netflix's Reed Hastings decided to transition from DVDs to streaming, he perfectly balanced these three elements. The timing was right, because internet infrastructure was improving. Resources were available because they had built a strong customer base. The team was ready because they had attracted top tech talent. Why this ancient wisdom matters more today. In this age of information overload, we need frameworks to make sense of complexity. Eastern thinking doesn't provide rigid rules. It offers flexible principles. Go teaches you to think systematically, rather than just tactically. In chess, each piece has specific moves, and the game is relatively predictable. But in Go, each stone's value completely depends on context and position. That's more like real life, isn't it? We live in a world of constant change. The job market is shifting, technology is evolving, social dynamics are transforming. Rigid thinking will leave you stuck, but flexible principles will help you adapt. The concept of yin-yang is particularly relevant. We always want certainty, clear answers, but reality is messy, full of contradictions. Learning to embrace paradox, to see opportunity in opposition, that's a survival skill. So next time you face a complex decision, try using this ancient framework. Ask yourself, what's the timing? Heaven. What are my constraints and resources? Earth. Who are the people involved? Humanity. Remember, this isn't about becoming an Eastern philosopher. It's about expanding your thinking toolkit. In a global economy, cross-cultural wisdom isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. I remember reading a story about Google's founders, visiting China and being fascinated by Go's complexity. They realized that Western thinking tends to be linear, while Eastern thinking tends to be circular and holistic. Maybe that's why magic happens when Eastern and Western approaches combine. Alright, that's all for today. If you found these concepts interesting, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Faith and Go. See you next time.